Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Allahumma rabbi zidni ilma. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome dear students in the subject of Internet Architecture and Protocols. It's Ghulam Yasin, lecturer in Computer Science, University of Education Lahore, DG Khan campus. Dear students, our today's lecture topic is virtual LAN, virtual local area network. So the contents which will be covered today: to identify what a VLAN is and how it operates, to configure a VLAN to improve network performance, to identify what role the switch plays in the creation of VLANs, to identify how network devices communicate with VLANs, and to observe the advantages of VLANs. A simple local area network. A simple local area networks are implemented by using bridges and switches, which are layer 2 devices. In the previous lectures we have discussed about local area networks, about switch, about bridge. So whenever we create a simple local area network, we will use switch as well as bridge to connect different devices. Second point, bridges and switches both supports multiple collisions domain but a single broadcast domain. We have also discussed in detail about collision domain and broadcast domain. So broadcast domain was when a specific network is created and all the devices are in that broadcast domain, and we have discussed about collision domain in detail in our previous lectures. Broadcast propagation. In this diagram you can see a server and there are 4 different switches and there are different workstations which are connected to these switches, and switches are indirectly connected to server. So what is broadcast propagation? When we send a message to all the devices, this is called broadcast, and there may be many purposes of these broadcast messages. For example, if we want to send any information to all the devices, then we will use the concept of broadcasting or broadcast propagation. So all devices over here fall in 172.16.0.0 subnet. So all these devices contains IP addresses, and this is fall in class B of IP addressing scheme. So whenever we will send a message to all devices, this concept is called broadcasting or broadcast propagation. Multiple broadcast domains. Before the introduction of switches and VLANs, networks were divided into multiple broadcast domains by connectivity through a router. When we create a simple local area network, this is independent LAN, and if we create another local area network, this is another independent local area network. So these are two independent local area networks. But nowadays we can create a virtual local area network in every local area network or in every LAN. Second point, as routers do not forward the broadcast, each interface is in the different broadcast domain. Router as well as switches work on the concept of unicasting. So when we will use router as well as switch, this will transfer data on the basis of unicasting and on the basis of IP addressing, on the basis of MAC addresses, on the basis of physical addresses, which we have discussed in our previous lectures in detail. Virtual LANs. So this is important slide to understand the concept of virtual local area networks or VLANs. There are 2 points over here. Point number 1, VLANs enable you to group users into a common broadcast domain regardless of their physical location in the internetwork. Let's suppose we have a room and we want to divide that room in four different areas. So we will use a sheet and we can divide that room in four different areas, or you can say that we can create offices for four different departments, and if we want to remove that sheet will be easily removed and we can see a room like a single space. So over here, if we create a local area network of 100 computers in any organization, that LAN may be divided into four virtual local area networks according to needs, according to situation, according to demand, or according to departments. So this is basic concept of virtual LAN. Second point, creating VLANs improves performance and security in the switch network by controlling broadcast propagation. Whenever we create VLANs, each department or each specific sub local area network or virtual LAN is controlled independently. So the controlling and managing of large network is difficult, but controlling or managing of small network like VLAN is much more easy. So VLAN is normally created in different organizations to manage to control a large network into smaller networks. VLAN concepts. Prior to VLAN, the broadcast traffic was controlled through segmentation using routers. VLANs are an extension of the switch network. By having the ability to place segments in individual broadcast domains, you can control where a given broadcast will be forwarded. So, simple speaking, VLAN is a subnetwork of a large local area network, and the management of VLAN is much more easy than a large local area network. Virtual LAN basics. To logically separate the devices in a local area network, we implement virtual local area networks or VLAN. For example, if you want that, say, 5 computers in a LAN should belong to a different broadcast and collision domains and 5 to some other, then using the same switch we can do it with the help of software as VLANs. So let's suppose if there are 10 computers in any organization and we have created a local area network, and these 10 computers are directly connected to a switch and switch is directly connected to a server, because a switch may be able to connect 24 devices, 48 devices and so on. So 10 devices are easily controlled by that switch, and ultimately server is controlling authority in local area network. But if we want that 5 computers belong to a different domain or different office, and the 5 computers are for different office, we can create virtual LAN with the help of software. So now 5 computers will belong to HR office and 5 computers belong to finance office. But physically, these 10 computers are connected to a switch. But logically, we have created a virtual LAN and now we have two different broadcast domains, or you can easily understand we have two different offices, and the management of one office is different and the management of second office is different. So in this way, VLAN help to manage a small portion of subnetwork. Second point, to increase the broadcast domains in LANs, VLANs are used. By default, broadcast domain is 1 and same in switch and bridges. But when we have created VLANs, we can enhance the concept of broadcast domains. Virtual LAN basics. In switches, the number of broadcast domains can be increased by using virtual LANs. As just I have said in our previous slide that we can enhance, we can increase the concept of broadcast domain with the help of VLANs. In routers, number of broadcast domains cannot be increased like switches. So this is very important differentiate between router and switch. Switch is able to create VLANs, but router cannot provide this facility. So VLANs are created in local area network, as the name specifies VLANs. So virtual local area networks are being used in local area networks. Second point, if we separate the broadcast domain using VLANs or using hardware devices, then layer 3 devices are used for communication between separate broadcast domain. So this is concept of internet, this is concept of wide area network, but VLAN is the concept of exactly local area network. The last point, two or more VLANs can never communicate with each other directly. These VLANs are communicated with the help of different softwares or different devices. How VLANs operates? VLANs as an individual broadcast domains. Every virtual LAN contains its own individual broadcast domain. So there are three important points over here. Point number one. Thus, when a frame arrives on a switch port, the catalyst switch must retransmit the frame only to the port that belongs to the same VLANs. A catalyst switch, basically these are different series for switches, and you can also search about the switch with the help of different numbers as well. So these switches as well as routers contain some specific numbers for identification. These are called series of router or series of switch. So when the switch will receives a frame and that belongs to the same VLANs, that will be retransmitted. We have studied the concept of this retransmission in our previous lecture as well. So if the frame belongs to the same VLANs, that will be retransmitted. Second is flooded traffic originating from a particular VLANs flood out only other ports belonging to that VLANs. We have also studied the concept of flooding. This was basic operation of switch as well as bridge. So when the data is being received by a switch or by bridge, and there is no entry of MAC address or physical address in MAC address table of switch as well as router, then the frame will be flooded. And after receiving the frame by the intended destination, the address MAC or physical address will be received by switch, and switch will update its MAC address table as well. Last point, this means that each VLAN is an individual broadcast domain. So we create the virtual LAN to divide broadcast domain. So if there is a local area network and there are 10 computers, this LAN contains a single broadcast domain. But if that local area network is being divided into two VLANs, now we have two broadcast domains. 5 computers belong to a single broadcast domain or broadcast domain 1, and the other 5 computers belong to broadcast domain 2. So in this way we have created two broadcast domains, and we have we have put 5 computers in one broadcast domain and 5 computers in second broadcast domain. And we have also discussed, we can assume that one department is HR department and the second department is finance department. VLANs. VLANs enable switches to create multiple broadcast domains within a switch network. This is basic concept of VLANs, to create multiple broadcast domains within a switch network. So one local area network is being divided into multiple small networks, multiple small subnetworks. So these small networks or these subnetworks are called VLANs. Second point, all the users in a given group are defined to be in the same virtual local area networks. If we talk about HR department, all the users of that department must be categorized in same VLANs. It means if IP addressing scheme is used for HR department, so the same IP addressing scheme will be used for all devices. Let's suppose if class B is used for 5 or 10 computers, then the addresses for all VLAN 1 must be categorized in class B of IP addressing scheme. Next point, any user in this VLAN would receive a broadcast from any other member of the same VLANs. Users of other VLANs would not receive these broadcasts. So the main reason or main factor to create VLAN is to control the privacy within a department or within VLANs or within small network within subnetwork. So when the messages are transmitted among the users of finance department, those messages can be seen, those transmission can be seen just only by finance department. So when the messages are transmitted among the users of HR department, the messages, the communication can be observed, can be seen by HR department only. So this is main purpose to create VLANs to enhance privacy, to control the broadcast within that specific broadcast domain. Last point, each of the users in a given VLAN would also be in the same IP subnet as we have discussed in point number 2. If we have used the concept of IP addressing for class B for subnet 1, then all the users of subnet 1 must be categorized in class B addressing scheme. And if class C addressing scheme is being used for any other department, any other VLAN, then all the users categorized in that VLAN must configure the same IP addressing scheme for all the users of that subnet, of that VLANs. VLAN overview. In this diagram, you can easily understand, you can easily see there are three subnets, and on the left side that is a large network which is a local area network of any organization, and you can see there are different switches which are implemented in local area network. So this is basically a single LAN. If you hide the right side of this image or this diagram, you can see just a single LAN. You can see just a single local area network in different apartment, in different stories of that building or different floors of that building. But on the right side, this is logical division of that physical local area network, and you can see there are three departments: sales department, HR department, and engineering department. So sales department has its own sales virtual LAN, HR department its own HR VLAN, and engineering department its own engineering VLAN. And you can see the addressing scheme or subnetting for each department: 172.16.0.0 for sales VLAN, 172.17.0.0 subnet for HR VLAN, as well as 172.18.0.0 subnet for engineering VLAN. So when we assign the IP addresses for engineering department, we will use the subnet 172.18.0.0, as well as when we will assign the IP addresses for HR department, we will use the subnet 172.17.0.0, and when we will assign the IP addresses to sales department, we will use the subnet 172.16.16.0. A switch connecting three local area networks. Over here you can see three different groups, and group 1 contains 4 computers, group 2 contains 3 computers, and group 3 contains 3 computers as well. And these 10 computers are directly connected to switch, a single switch. But these are logically divided into 3 groups instead of a single local area network. So these are different groups. So basically these are 3 different VLANs by which we can easily manage, we can easily control, we can easily provide security for these groups, and basically these are VLANs. A switch using VLAN software, switch contains its own software, its own operating system, which is used to provide different services to the connected devices or connected computers. So over here you can see a switch with VLAN software. Definitely that cannot be shown over here, but assume that VLAN contains a software and that is basically implemented in switch. So there are three VLANs: VLAN 1, VLAN 2 and VLAN 3. So VLAN 1 belongs to a specific department, VLAN 2 belongs to some other specific department, and V3 belongs to some other specific department, and all these computers are connected to the ports of a switch. But this is logical division. You can see VLAN 1, VLAN 2 and VLAN 3. These are three logical divisions, but physically all these devices, all these computers are connected to a single switch. Two switches connected to a backbone switch. Over here, this is another concept of connecting a VLANs to switch and two switches to another switch. So this is a previous diagram but enhancing the concept of two switches connecting to a backbone switch. So you can see VLAN 1, VLAN 2 and VLAN 3. This is again same diagram as the previous slide, and all these three VLANs are connected to different switches. But over here you can see two different switches. In the previous slide we have seen that VLAN 1, VLAN 2 and VLAN 3, all these devices, all these computers are connected to a single switch. But over here we are going to use two different switches, and these two switches are being connected with the help of another backbone switch. So this may be due to a shortage of ports, due to lack of ports. So there may be any other reason to use two switches over here, but the concept is again same, to create VLANs, which is a logical division of a physical network. So in this way we have studied in detail the concept of VLANs, how VLANs are created, and what is the basic purpose to create VLAN. So dear students, thank you very much for your concentration, for your learning, for your passion. I hope best of luck for all of you always.